Hi, everybody. I am so blessed, really honored, frankly, to bring you this really remarkable woman. Her name is Jordana Brown. She's sitting right next to me right now, and you're going to meet her in 5 seconds. Jordana kind of burst onto the Instagram community a couple of weeks ago, and she started telling her story. Her Instagram handle is from SMBC, so from Single Mother Right Choice. And I can't wait to hear her story, especially on a day like today, which is Mother's Day. And we know that Mother's Day celebrates all different kinds of mothers. And here we are with Jordana. So, Jordana, please say hi.
Happy Mother's Day, my first.
Okay, first of all, Mazel Tov, congratulations. Happy Mother,
Thank you.
first
Hamsa,
Mother's
hamsa,
Day.
hamsa, hamsa.
Exactly, exactly. Um, okay, talk to us. You have a long journey to motherhood. So I want you, if you can, to take us back to maybe even when you were little. Like, what did you think your life was going to be like? When did you think you were going to become a mother? How did you think it would all turn out? And then at what point did that shift for you? And when did you realize that maybe things were going to be different?
I think like I always think about, the game MASH where you think, you're gonna you have a mansion and you're gonna marry, Justin Timberlake and you're gonna get married at 21 and you're so 21 was when I wanted to get married. So ostensibly I was planning to have the baby 9 months later. And that's really what I thought until I was 22. I really thought that was like the plan. My mom had me at, I want to say like 23. It's like, all right, she waited a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I really thought that I was going to be, having babies all throughout my 20s when people would ask me, how many kids do you want? Which I just think is such a crazy question now. But at the time, it was a very normal question. How many babies do you want? I would always say as many as Hashem gives me, which, what if Hashem gives you 25? Then I'll have 25. I mean, I was very, very ready to have as many kids as Hashem would bless me with. And obviously within the confines of a stable, healthy marriage, that was the plan. And I was very mainstream. I grew up modern Orthodox. So obviously I wasn't going to have 25 kids because tuition, but I was going to live, I guess, in the tri-state area. And I was going to be somewhere between modern Orthodox and, cool yeshivish. That was like my range. And then I was going to have a bunch of kids and they were going to go to the same similar schools to the ones I went to. And I was a speech therapist, and that was the plan until it wasn't.
And when so when wasn't it? When did you start to think like, okay, I'm guessing it was somewhere past 23, maybe. Um, when did it kind of like all of a sudden things didn't work out that way and things started to shift in your head? Because first of all, I'm speaking to you and you're in Israel now, so you're not in the tri-state area. So also like when did that move happen?
Okay. So I think things, the concept of an older single is very nebulous. And sometimes people think 25 is an older single, and sometimes people think 30, and sometimes people think 35. And so I think when I became whatever the youngest version of an older single was, I kind of recalibrated what I was doing with my life. And I became very involved in Jewish outreach. And and one of the outlets for Jewish outreach was Birthright Israel. So I would bring kids of various religious stripes to Israel for their first time. And we would have a 10-day trip together, and it was wonderful. And then after the trip, we would stay in touch and we would be friends, and I would have them over for Shabbat meals and stuff like that. And it was like that was my life. And I did 12 birthrights. I did win an
Wow.
award at one point. I did a lot, but now people do way more. But I did 12 birthrights, and in the interim, like all over those, that span of time, because I was a speech therapist, so I was off in the winter and I was off in the summer. So I would have these like big break gaps in my calendar, and I would go to Israel and I would stay there. Sorry, and I would stay
Often.
there I would stay there for 3 weeks and a month and whatever it was. And I became very, I was always very, what I like to call pro-Israel. And I became very Zionist, and I draw a distinction, and Zionist means that you actually have some aspiration to live in Israel. So I had an aspiration to live in Israel, and I started dating guys who wanted to live in Israel. And at a certain point, it just got to be like, I'm going to move to Israel on my own, and then I'll meet him there. And it was always, I'll meet him there. And I even gave myself one last year. I moved back in with my parents. I gave myself one last year, and I said, I'm going to meet him here, and then we'll go to Israel together. And I didn't meet him there. And there were like all types of, I was not dating the type of guy at any point, I think, in my life that suited me. One or two that I liked, in the long journey of my dating. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we would call.
Meaning that you weren't getting set up with the right people, or that you were
Yeah, I
making
would say I wasn't
choices.
getting, I would say I was, I mean, I think that I have a really positive self-image. Sometimes I have a positive self-image, and I think highly of myself, and I think highly of my friends and the women in my community. And I think that some of the shit up system and some of the dating system does not really value the woman in the way that they should. They make the woman feel less than, they make the men feel much better than they are. And so when you have a man who feels like he's this, but he's this, and you have a woman who feels like she's this and she's this, then there is a mismatch, and they don't go on dates. So I mean, the
Well,
value obviously.
just for those of you who are not actually watching Jordana in her
Oh,
emotions
sorry.
here. No,
The
it's
men,
all good. Go ahead, go ahead.
the men are told that they are better than they are, and the women are told that they are less than they are. So it's a mismatch, whereas,
Yeah,
wherein those men and women are not meeting. And, obviously things that are valued in the shidduch dating system are very, very often very materialistic and very non important to uh, as it would be in the outside world. So in the outside world, like we're in a bubble. We are. Um,
on
and
some level, yes,
yes, for sure.
we
So
in the
then,
Orthodox system, yes, we are in a
and
bubble.
I held a lot of hope that in Israel the system would be better, and I actually do think it is. So I moved to Israel when I was around 30, 31, and I did Ulpan, and I lived in Jerusalem. While I was in Jerusalem, I froze my eggs for the first time because it became a thing. I went to kind of a speech about it, and I said, yeah, this is what I want to do, because I want to be able to have children regardless of whether I ever become a wife. But of course, I will become a wife. That was never in question.
Of course.
And
And can I stop you for a second?
yes,
Were there other people around you at that point? Did you have peers who were also freezing at that juncture in time? Because that's something that people don't necessarily take. I not asking how old you are, because that's not important here,
okay,
but the notion of like, oh, well, when you get to be 30, 31 to freeze your eggs, it is a novel concept, even
correct,
still today, in today's day and age.
right. I would say that I was somewhat of a pioneer in that scenario as well, but certainly people were much more open to it. And once I did it, I probably helped along 15 to 20 women in Israel
Wow.
go through the process as well. I don't know that I was first, but I was among the first of my
Yeah.
peers. And
I,
also
I-
I did,
Go ahead, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, I did it what would be considered young. I did it at 33, and a lot of times now women will kind of like um, do it at the last juncture possible. And I knew that I wanted eggs that were as fresh as they could be,
That you were thinking ahead. You were thinking, you know
for
what?
sure.
I just want to make sure that no matter what happens, like I can't predict what
I'm
the rest
taking
of
care
my
of it.
life will be. I
Yes,
just want to make sure that I have this thing waiting.
yes, exactly. And without getting too deep into it, I actually, I'm trying to think if so I met someone, and it was my first long-term relationship, and I thought that I was going to marry him. And I was like, wow, this makes all the sense in the world, because, um, I hit it out of the park. I was one for one. I nailed it. And it turned out to be one of the most traumatic things that has ever happened to me. in the world. He was a very serious intravenous drug user, and I had no idea. And so that was just not for me. And then I helped him go to rehab. And then he met a girl in the rehab that I sent him to. And then I believe they're still together. So I always say that nothing good came from that relationship except that I started to recycle. But now I obviously realize that that had to happen to get to my baby. So that two good things, recycling and Amalia, but it was a horrific relationship. So I would say that that was certainly an impetus to stop pressing so hard to find someone, because I probably was more traumatized by that relationship than I realized at the time.
And so what you're saying is that, like, you were searching and searching and searching and searching, and then when you thought that you finally found it, and then you uncovered all of these pieces that were hidden, and you were like, "Oh, no, I can't do this."
Right.
It sounds like you got to a place where you're like, I'm not so sure that there's anyone else out there that
Yes.
I could
Yeah.
actually do this with, and
Yeah.
maybe it's now time to rethink what the plan is.
You nailed it. I mean, it was a scenario where I was like, oh, there's one person in the world that is for me. And then that person was very much not for me. And then I assumed that that was like the last person. But also, I did go back into the dating world and I liked someone else. And, he wasn't the one. And COVID hit. And that was super, super, as every single person knows, it was like a pause in time, and you either married the person that you quarantined with or you didn't date for 3 years, like those were
Right.
those were your options. I was pretty COVID careful, so I wasn't really bringing a lot of people around. And I remember that I just felt at that point like the pool of men that would have been appropriate for me was looking for me minus 10 years. And even though that they were age appropriate for me, they were very, very stuck on um, youth. And I obviously they tied that to beauty or fertility. I again mentioned that I have a positive self image, so I never thought it was because of how I looked, but I did definitely think that they were obsessed with the fertility thing. And I said, well, that's okay. You can keep waiting and you can keep dating, and I'm going to have a baby by myself with whatever
And
fertility I have.
and you felt that even though, I mean, I'm guessing at some point you shared with people like, "Hey, by the way, I have these eggs, so like I'm X age, but that doesn't matter because I have these things." Like people didn't care about that?
That was not ever something that was discussed
Okay.
um as like it was. I know that people talk about it now, and a shot like a matchmaker will say, oh no,
Yes.
she has 30 eggs in the freezer, whatever it is. That was never something that I like discussed, because I also, number one, gave up the concept of dating through a matchmaker.
Okay.
I feel like and for all the matchmakers out there, God bless you and keep doing good things. I feel like it's an absolutely useless pursuit in terms of me. I always call it spaghetti at the wall, and like, two pieces will stick and then they'll take all the credit in the world. Like, there was a lot of people calling me who had never met me in their lives and suggesting people that I knew about, and like all my friends would be like, "You will hate him." It was like a lot of like, "You will hate him." So yeah, I just felt like I do have these eggs, but that's like, that's a me thing. And but I understand why people would ask about that, because unfortunately, these men who are 45 think that they're having 7 children, and it's just
Yes.
like a crazy, nonsensical, you know, thing.
Yes, 1,000%. I do you did was there pushback? Like, did people in your life say to you, "Why are you giving up? Like, why are you choosing this path? Why aren't you still holding out? Like, why are you giving up?"
I would say the number one person asking that question was my mother, who really enjoys you. And I don't think she will be offended. She was very, and to this, like, I was 8 months pregnant and she was saying, don't give up, on finding someone. Like, she is holding the candle. So she's, I would say, the major believer in the fact that I should be in a relationship and I should be in a stable relationship and I should be in a happy relationship and the confines of marital bliss. She felt like that from the beginning and she feels like that now. But she understood it at some point. She was probably the most skeptical in the beginning. And then she's been super supportive ever since it's the same way how she was when I made Aliyah. She was the day I
Right.
made Aliyah, she posted, "I've never been so sad. My daughter's making Aliyah." And now she likes that I'm here because she understands that it's right for me. So she was very much, you can't give up on finding a spouse. But and I also started, you asked if people were asking about my fertility. I actually
Yeah.
started my journey when I was at an age where I had a few years left. I wasn't, at the end of my tether. So yes, a few people thought that I should keep dating or date during my journey, which I completely stopped. I didn't date at all, and I didn't meet anyone while I was trying.
Okay. And I guess the other question is, you identify as being in the modern Orthodox realm.
Yeah.
Was there was there any pushback? Were there questions that you had? Like, how did you know that you could, so to speak, do this? I mean, anybody can do anything. So let's just put that, piece aside, right? But as someone who is in the modern Orthodox world, you didn't have so many role models that were out there saying, "Oh, here I'm a modern Orthodox woman, or I'm an Orthodox woman, I'm a single mother by choice." So, how did you know? How did you understand? Who did you go to? Where did you get the strength to say, like, this is something that I can do and still very much sort of stay here and stay in this place where I deeply believe this is the place where I grew up. This is where I feel most connected and the way I relate to God. Like, how did you know and how did you get the strength to be able to do that?
Strength. When I don't remember what age I was, but I have this very close friend, Ahuva. And I feel like if I said her last name, like everybody who listens to would know who she is. She's a very famous and popular person. And Ahuva said to me, she always says, "Do you want to go to a shiur, like a Torah lecture?" And I always say
Yep.
no. And she said, "No, but this one is for the Judaic halachic ramifications around egg freezing and single motherhood and like having a baby by yourself." And it was given by a rabbi doctor professor. So he was a law professor who also had rabbinic ordination. He's from Atlanta. Do you know him? I forgot his name. You know who I'm talking about? And he basically had all the bases covered. So he understood all of the halachic ramifications, he understood the legal ramifications, and then he also understood I forgot the last one, the medical ramifications. So he was everything. And then he had, and at this, like, it became a panel, and an OBGYN came in as well to talk to us about how it all works. And she was the one who convinced me.
Hold on one second. I'm stopping you. Panel where? On
It
Zoom
wasn't
in
really a panel.
Israel? Is
Yes, it was a speech, like a gathering of single women in Jerusalem.
okay.
And then they called in and it became a panel, or she ended up speaking, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But then this woman came in, and she is an OBGYN at Shari Tzedek Medical Center in Jerusalem. And so she gave more of a medical perspective in terms of like Israel, because this doctor was from Atlanta.
America.
So,
Yep.
so she had the Israeli perspective on it, and she was great. And she was the one actually who convinced me to freeze a second time, um, because she wanted me to make sure I had a certain amount of eggs. And yeah, the two of them were super, super helpful in shaping how I saw it as a religious person. Obviously, we all know that halachically there's nothing wrong with freezing one's eggs now. But there were a lot of questions like on my Instagram page that people still ask me, like, how is your child not considered a mamzer? Which sperm do you choose? Things like that. Like, those are all halachic questions. I had other halachic questions once she was born. I would have had even more and different ones if she was a boy. Like, I had different questions constantly.
Right.
And yeah, so I was very interested in the Jewish perspective always.
And so you got your answers there. I guess maybe not even answers, but maybe you had an understanding that you could do this, that
Mhm.
it could happen, and this was a framework in terms of the way it could happen. From at that point, was it okay, now I'm like full speed ahead, like here I am, let's go, like I'm ready and I'm doing this and I need to, and now like how did and what about like what would everybody else say if you decided to become a single mother by choice? What piece forget about now, like you already dealt with the one person in your life who said, "Oh, you're giving up." Like you're giving up and don't give up. But what about the other piece? What about the things that people will say?
Yeah. So I will say that I think that single motherhood, like I always say, Aliyah is for everyone, and people really fight me on that. And I don't know that single motherhood is for everyone, just like I don't know that motherhood is for everyone. Meaning, I think biologically it's for everyone, but obviously there are mothers who struggle tremendously. Um, and then there are these people who are like, my mother should have never had kids and whatever it is. So I think that single mothers are like mothers with spouses in every single way, specific and particularly. So if you know me as person, which you don't, but some people do, I think that my fortitude, my character is very much someone who can handle being a single mother, just in terms of like being very, very strong, being very independent, problem solving, at being open to asking for help. So those are all things that are part of my nature. So I was very much a good candidate. I'm a big believer in deadlines. So I had a deadline for moving to Israel, as I mentioned. I had a deadline for freezing my eggs, for freezing them the second time. And so I gave myself a deadline and I said, if I haven't met someone by this age, I will start my procedures, I will start my process. And I thought that I would start, and then 9 months later, I would have a baby, similar to when I was little, and I thought I would have a baby 9 months after my chuppah. Um, if I had known how difficult it would be to get there, I don't know that I would have been as gung ho. I probably would have, because I would have realized that I need to go. Time is ticking. But I definitely wouldn't have had. I would have had that like very beautiful, optimistic nature of in 9 months I will be carrying my baby around the shook.
Do you think that were you worried at all about what people might say about the fact that, when you had your baby, and I mean, we know now you have
Yeah.
a beautiful, first of all, we're going to skip to the end for a second. Tell us about your daughter and then we'll come back.
Okay. She's right here. I'm watching her.
We're watching
Um,
her on the monitor. I'm not watching her. You're watching her.
Right.
Yes.
She's, thank God, 8 months. I'm going to say a lot of thank Gods and Hamsas, and I'm just very,
Yep.
very like that, especially since, after what I went through. But she's 8 months. She is in a full-time gun in, or nursery here in Tel Aviv. She is, I don't want to cry, she is cuter than I could have imagined in my wildest dreams. And it's not just me who says that. So that's why she wears like a little red bendel on her chubby
Yep.
wrist. She's
To ward off the evil eye, for those of you who
evil
do not
eye.
know.
Exactly. Because evil eyes are, coming from all directions. So she is, and she has the loveliest nature. She's funny. Thank God she's sitting up and she's what we call commando crawling, and she's smiling and she loves people. And I don't know if this is just something that I'm picking up in her, but she's always smiling at people who look like they need a smile. Like if there's like a sad looking little like a old man on the bus, or I'll randomly see her smiling over my shoulder and I'm like, who's she looking at? And she's looking at this, nebuch, this sad man or this sad lady or this older person, whatever it is, by themselves. And she's always smiling at them, and they look at her and they always say hamuda hamuda, and I say, yeah, she's cute, which means cute cute. And I say,
Yes.
yes, she is. And they say, I mean, she's mituka, she's sweet, and she's God, thank God she's like whatever I could have envisioned as the greatest, she's better. B'li hara, without
And
any
and
evil.
and so the reactions, like, so now going back, I mean, you see her now and how delicious she is. And I'm imagining that everyone who meets her falls in love with her and how amazing she is. And like, no one's ever, what if, and you shouldn't have in this. But
Right,
when you first started telling people that you were trying, that you were going
right,
through this process,
right.
or when people, maybe I'm not sure how many people you shared it with, but we'll get to that in a second. But what about even when you were pregnant and, the questions that people will ask, like, how did people respond then as opposed to the way they respond now she's out and she's delicious and yummy and amazing?
Okay, so so people responded when I was going through it, positively. I think that, obviously religion and observance is a spectrum. And so I fall enough on the spectrum of modern Orthodox and have a lot of friends who are progressive, have a lot of friends who are secular, whoever, that are open minded, however you want to phrase them, that I probably got maybe one or two people who either didn't get it or didn't approve. And I can remember who they are off the top of my head. Every other person, and I mean every other person, was into it and like obsessed with it and excited about it and asking about it. Now, do I know that what people were saying behind my back? Absolutely not. That's not my business, as I like to say. I will say, like, from someone like my dad, who's extremely mainstream, he's my best friend in the world and I love him to bits and pieces. But he was kind of like, he said something that really broke my heart. And he said, "What will we tell Shul?"
Well,
Because,
meaning your synagogue, your community, your
right,
people, etc.,
right,
the extended people. Yeah.
correct. But what will we tell Shul in the sense that, um, what will we put in the newsletter,
Bulletin.
in
Right.
the
In the
bulletin?
new, yeah.
And by the way, thank God it happened, and they did put it in the bulletin. And what they put in the bulletin was very, very hurtful to me. They know that, but
Yeah.
but
Am I allowed to
yeah,
ask what they
yeah,
did?
no, I mean, listen, they said, in the bulletin, they said Mazal Tov to my parents, um, on the birth of a granddaughter in Tel Aviv, Israel,
Without mentioning your
without
name.
my name. Yeah. Which is not the norm. The norm is, Mazal Tov to, Sid and Nancy Rosenberg on the birth of a granddaughter to their children, Chaya and Michael in Jerusalem, Israel.
Yeah.
So that's the norm. They didn't say my name, um, because they didn't want it to stick out that there was one name. And I understood that, meaning my, openness does not need to be their openness. And they're very open with their friends, and their friends all know. And I had a simchat bat, which was like a little party for her, and all of their friends came and they all sent gifts, and everybody's been really lovely and delightful and beautiful. But I understood that they didn't need, Joe Blow Schmo at his Shabbos table saying, "How weird is that?" So I definitely understood where they were coming from, but that was a little hurtful. But he's the greatest Zadie in the world, and he talks to her every day, and he's loving and giving. So that's really, at the end of the day, what I will remember.
Can you can you share with us, like, what did people, you said there was, the people who like were talking to when you said, like, oh, by the way, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
And then what about all of the people, like, during the time that it took you from the time that you started to the
right.
time that you had your daughter?
Hmm.
Was I talk to us a little
Sure.
bit about that period and the things that you went through and the things that people were saying at that point.
Okay. So I had, an odyssey. I had, before she was born, I had four losses, and one of them um, was a longer tenure. Like, I had to deliver, and so that was really, really traumatic. But throughout all of the pregnancies, I really carried small. And even with her, I carried small, or at least in my delusional mind, I carried small. So, what my friends like to call my pregnancy with Amalia was my secret pregnancy. I did not tell anyone. A lot of the closest people to me did not see me for the entire tenure. Most people who lived in America, all of my family who lived in America, people who lived in Jerusalem. I wasn't really traveling, I wasn't going back and forth. Um, so I would say, in the my closer circle, and it was a need to know situation. If you saw me within my seventh, eighth, and ninth month, you might have known. Otherwise, I was not calling anyone. I was not telling anyone. The only people that I called to tell were my parents and my sisters, and that was it. And my sisters actually waited for a while to tell my nieces and nephews because I really was so, so concerned after all the loss, that I did not want anyone to know. So I had a secret pregnancy, and when I made the announcement, um, it was a huge shock to people. It like that was like the number one response was I had no idea, and I was like, yeah, because in the interim, I have a lot of close friends that I did talk to about my journey as it was, going forward, and at toward the end, after 2, 3, 4 years, someone says to you, "Do you want me to ask? Do you want me to tell me about it? Do you want to say something?" And I said, "No," and that was it. I mean, it was something that we just didn't talk about, um, after a certain point because it was really there was nothing joyful about it.
You know, for those listeners and Jordana, who I'm really just meeting now in this conversation, everything you just shared about how you were scared and that this was your secret pregnancy. So I also had 4 miscarriages before I had my twins, and exactly the same. Not a single person, unless they saw me going to the grocery store. I
Yep,
was basically a hermit. I didn't leave my house. I didn't tell my parents I was pregnant for a very long time. No one knew I was having twins. I so yes, it's the trauma that we carry,
yeah,
and it's our way of trying to protect ourselves a little bit. Like we just I know for me, like I just needed to hold on to that information. Like I couldn't handle people's comments about my stomach. Like I just didn't want to have them.
totally. But I mean, like obviously the difference between a single mother by choice and someone like you would be that I didn't have my husband to confide in, um, for better or for worse, you know? So my mother became my husband. She was who I would confide in, except, I love my mother to bits and pieces, but we have a very typical Jewish mother-daughter relationship where she's my biggest fan and my biggest critic. And so, which it was a lot of, oh, ma, and she was really trying her best. And she actually was in the hospital with me and then, the delivery room, and she was holding my leg, and she was it for me. And she stayed for 3 extra weeks, and she's fantastic in every single way. But I did not have a partner, and I went to every single one of my 3,000 doctor's appointments and blood tests and sonograms, and every single thing I did by myself. I did not want one person to come with me to anything. That was just how I played it.
Right, right. And I guess my question here as we're starting to wrap up is, you know, what do you wish that you could have told your younger self at the start of this process? What do you wish that the community maybe could better understand about people who choose to become mothers by choice? I I I, I mean, this I can imagine that, this journey, like you're sitting here now, and again, we're having this discussion where you have a daughter who's 8 months old. And for people who are very much still on this journey and wondering what their life is going to look like it's deeply painful and they just don't know. And there's so much unknown. So, what do you say to them? What do you say to those people?
I think about I think about the fact that she exists, and that, like I always said, once I have a baby, because I was very positive that it would happen at some point because I was never going to stop trying. So I felt like once I have a baby, I want to be an advocate, and I want to be, a sounding board and a person and a friend to anyone who wants to do the same thing as me. But I really can't do that, and I can't be that person, both emotionally and like logistically. I could not be that person until I did it. I could not give the support that I wanted to until I had the baby. So that was really frustrating as well because I was so interested in being a sounding board and a person there for other people who wanted to do what I did. I always, and I mentioned this like on my page, but I always wanted to be a mother before more than I wanted to be a wife. And it bothers my mother and some other people that it doesn't bother me that I'm not married, and it doesn't bother me that I'm not in a relationship, and it doesn't bother me if I never am. I optimally would like to be, but I always wanted to be a mother, and I feel like there are so many Jewish women and there are so many Orthodox Jewish women who feel exactly the way that I do, and feel like the real tragedy of their singlehood is the fact that they're not mothers, much more so than the fact that they're not wives. And I just think it's something that you can take into your own hands, and that the people who have problems with it will get over it. They will. I mean, life goes on and it's not that serious. And at the end of the day, you're coming out with something that's really special and really beautiful. That doesn't mean that there's not a million questions and a million issues. I mean, I think about things that she's going to ask me all the time. I think about, problems that she might have, being in a single parent home all the time. But at the end of the day, there are problems and issues in every single home. So it's just something we'll have to navigate.
I love that. I love that. It is 1,000%. Absolutely everything you said is 1,000% true. There is no perfect life. There is no perfect family. There is no perfect experience. There's no perfect relationship. There's no perfect child, right? There's no perfect anything. And for each person, it's about how do you take your circumstances and in whatever way you can to try to do whatever it is to really kind of forge your own destiny. I mean, for you, there were things maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I think about this in my own life also, in that I said to myself, oh, if I'm 35 and I'm not married, like I want to adopt. Like at that point in my life, like that was because I desperately wanted to be a mother. I'm a pediatrician by training. This you may not know about me. The audience
I
may.
saw that you were an MD and I wanted to
Okay.
know
Yes.
that.
So I'm a pediatrician by training. Why am I a pediatrician? Because I love children, because
Right,
I've always wanted to be a mother. And
right,
so I think it's 1,000% true that there are so many in the single communities who really say, and I get these messages all the time, say like, I want to be a mother, but I feel like I'm two steps away from that because I have
right,
to get married first
right,
and then I can be a mother. And if I'm not even married, then what are my options?
right.
And look, this is a path that is not for everyone. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
But yet, it is such a beautiful option for the people that
Yes.
can handle it.
Right. Correct. And I think that, like, obviously, financial issues and time management and emotionally, and there's a million issues that will come up and maybe, prohibitive. But if those are not prohibitive for you, then it's something that you should think about. And it's something that, like I always say, I'm so lucky that I was alive in 2025, because if I was alive in 1825, there would be no way. I would have been, a spinster forever, and that would have been it. So I feel very, very lucky to be at the juncture that I'm at. And I think in 10 years, this conversation is going to be hilarious to people.
I hope so. That
Yeah.
is that is my hope. Like in the same way, right? That we've done so much work and we now are speaking about so many different topics that are taboo in the Jewish community, in the religious
Yeah.
Jewish community, right? I think this is one of those topics that I
Totally.
hope, just like you, exactly what you said, I hope and pray that this is an absolutely hilarious conversation. Okay, one last thing. I'm just
Hmm.
curious.
Okay.
Your first Mother's Day as a
Yeah.
mother,
Right.
you obviously, let me actually say that differently. This is your first Mother's Day as a mother of a child who is here in your arms on
Right.
this earth. You have been a mother to all of your other babies that are not here with you. So I'm curious, how do you intend to spend Mother's Day?
I have. I'm so sad to say it like I'm going to say it. I live in Israel, and Sunday is a work day.
Yep.
So I have no plan for Mother's Day. I hope to speak to my mother. I hope to speak to my sisters, who are wonderful mothers. And I hope to hug my baby, and like, she's not going to make me a card and gone. It's just one of the foibles of living in Israel.
Yep.
But I feel, I'm going to be, I mean, it's a dream. It's a dream. I could be literally sitting, on a bus for the 8 hours, and I would be happy. So just for Sunday in general, I don't like to sit on a bus for 8 hours, but I'll be
I
very grateful.
was gonna say, I don't know very many people who like to sit on a bus for 8 hours.
Right, right. I'm probably gonna say honestly, and I know this sounds like so silly, but I'll probably say some little tefillah, some little, prayer of thanksgiving, because I'm very I can't believe Shehechianu, I can't believe it.
Jordana, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You are a real light and inspiration to so many people out there who,
Yeah,
again, never necessarily thought that they were going to be in this position, but here you are, and
yeah.
you're speaking about it and you're sharing your story because you want other people to know this is a beautiful life that you can choose to make for yourself. Obviously, in the fertility process, there are things we can control, and there are very many things, even more things that we can't control,
Right.
right? We
Hmm.
can't control the outcome, but you can, for the people out there that are thinking about this, considering this, you can actually take that and you can do something with it. You can freeze your eggs to preserve your options for later on.
Hmm.
And when and if you're ready, you can become a single mother by choice.
Right.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.